Hey, it's another episode of High Ticket Woman. Welcome back. I'm Debbie Caudle, and today I have with me Jen Robb. Jen is a nurse practitioner and an author, a coach, a wife, and as she puts it, a fiercely devoted mom. And I think that's going to really stand out as we talk today. She's spent over 20 years in medicine, specializing in acute care, and she's now also certified in functional and integrative medicine. And she is the author of her book, Warrior Mom Rising, A Mom's Battle Plan to Advocate, Overcome, and Thrive. It's both her story and a guide, a lifeline, and a rallying cry for moms who are in the trenches. So we're going to have to talk about what that means. And as she says, it's for the woman trying to hold her family together while quietly falling apart. I can't relate to that at all, Jen. What are you talking about? It's
Nobody
for
can
the mom.
relate, right?
Right. It's for the mom who wants to believe there's still hope, even when the diagnosis is scary and the road is long. And it's for the woman of faith who needs a reminder that she can be both a fierce advocate and a surrendered daughter of God. It sounds very much like we need to hear what you have to say, Jen. So welcome to the High Ticket Woman.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to be here.
You know, you said that nobody wakes up thinking, today I'm going to become a warrior mom. So can you share the moment or season when you realized that this was going to be your battle?
Yeah, so like our story started like when my daughter was 12 and she started struggling with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and ultimately leading into self-harm. But
Mhm.
it was a long road of that, right? And so it was through that and like talking to people that I realized that there's not a lot of people out there that are like focused on helping the moms that are really struggling, right? Because when your child is struggling, it's oftentimes a very lonely place to be, right?
Yeah,
Because you're still trying to do all the other mom things, right?
absolutely.
And the
I'm
wife
sure that
thing,
you had other children alongside
right?
her. But
Right. So Chloe is the youngest,
Mhm.
and she has two older brothers. So there, I had three under the age of three. So they're now 20, 19, and 17. But when this struggle, they were all very young, middle school age, right? And, I just realized that there's not a lot out there. And as moms, we kind of have to do it all. But when we have a child that's struggling, we really have to kind of find that inner warrior within us and kind of step up, right? Because it's no longer just dealing with normal issues when they're really struggling with mental health. Like Chloe was really struggling with like wanting to take her life. Your whole goal then becomes keeping her alive, right? And still trying to be a mom to everybody else and do all the other things that you normally do. So I feel like that's kind of like what God kind of calls us to be that warrior, right? We have to put on the armor every day, and we have to be able to wage war for our children.
Yeah. What was the hardest part for you walking through all of this with Chloe, for you personally as a mom?
It's very difficult to have a child that is hurting. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we don't want that for anybody, even our spouses, right? If they're hurting, of course it hurts us because naturally women are nurturers and caregivers. But when your child is hurting, it's like a whole nother level of pain and grief that you feel, right? Because as a mama, we want to make everybody better all the time. And we're used to that, right? You think about when they fall down and they scrape their knee. It's very easy for us to scoop them up, hug them, wipe it off, kiss it, and put a band-aid on it, and then it's better. But when your child is kind of trapped in this mental health spiral,
Yeah.
it is a deep level of grief and pain that you feel and almost guilt, right?
Mm.
Because like did you cause this? Did you miss it? What happened? How did we get here? There's a lot of questions and then guilt that you can't magically fix it. You can't put a band-aid over it and make it all better.
No. It would be so nice if you could, but life is a lot messier than that. I know you described times where you were just, you know, praying on the bathroom floor or crying after school meetings. I mean, there was obviously some incredibly difficult times in trying to advocate for your daughter.
Mm. Yep.
Do you have is there anything about that that you feel comfortable sharing? Because I'm sure there are moms out there are listening going, "Well, what did she do and how did she do it?" And, and this is this whole part of, like, stepping up as the warrior mom because you did have to, advocate for her.
Well, oftentimes when our children are struggle, especially like when she was in school, right?
Mhm.
There's things that were triggers for her. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of the backstory was is we found out after Chloe had kind of started spiraling down this really dark hole of self-harm where she was actually cutting
Mm.
to kind of quiet the noise in her head. It was after all of this that she finally kind of told us that she had been sexually assaulted by another student.
Yeah.
So she had been carrying that as a child for a very long time, right? And again, kids don't have the cognitive ability to kind of deal with that level of pain that they feel, right? They barely know what they feel on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean,
Yeah.
lots of changes happening, hormones, body changes. There's so many things happening to them in that adolescence age. And then you tack on a trauma.
Yeah.
And so, like but in the school system, I had to tell them she can't I don't want that person around her at all. Like, I don't want them passing in the hallways. I don't want so it was a lot of advocating for her to keep her out of harm's way, right?
Was the legal system involved in any of this? I mean,
So they were at first.
yeah.
We had the option to press charges.
Yeah.
But at that time, Chloe was literally in the fetal position crying, saying she wanted to kill herself. And at
Mm.
that time, as a
What
mom,
was your focus? Yeah.
you have to make the decision, is it worth potentially traumatizing her more,
Yeah.
because there's a statute of limitations that's for their till they're much older, right? When that happens when they're a kid, we could do it later, right? At that moment, it was me telling the DA, "Listen, I have to keep her alive right now. That is my goal. I will have to revisit this at another time
Yeah.
because Chloe was my priority." And I knew that there was no way at the condition in the state that she was in that she was going to be able to go into a DA's office and talk about it. She was not gonna be able to ever take a witness stand and talk about it. She was in no position. And that
Yeah.
that again comes down to the moms advocating, right? And
Yeah.
it kind of feels like a no-win situation sometimes when you're in that position, right? It's like, if you don't press charges, is there really justice for her?
Right.
But if you do and you drag her down this legal battle on stands and with exams and all these
Yeah.
other
And
things,
she's fragile, emotionally
right?
fragile. Yeah.
It wasn't worth risking sending her completely off the edge, if you will, when she was already very on the on the very edge. So we just had to choose.
Yeah. Uh, well, and I don't imagine you'd go back and do anything different at this point, would you?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that decision, but I know, like, for moms that are in those positions, sometimes when you have to face a hard choice for your child and it really feels like your back's against the wall and there's really no right or wrong, right? We could have pursued that,
Yeah.
but at what cost,
At what cost to her? Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, she is my baby girl. Okay, I'm gonna do everything I can to protect her more than I'm gonna worry about what's gonna happen in the legal system.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when you're faith-based, you just have to know that someday they'll get their what's coming to him, you know?
Well, and I was gonna ask you because your faith can be so tested through something like this. So, what role did your faith in God play in just helping you keep going, when maybe there were times when you were just internally falling apart?
I say this all the time. We we were kind of like your picture perfect white picket fence, all American Christian family, right? I mean,
Mm.
my husband and I, we've been married for 25 years, loving home, grew up in the church, the whole 9 yards, right? And so when this happened to Chloe, I wrestled a long time with God and kind of really kind of angry. Like,
Yeah.
like, this child is, like, the girl after 2 boys, and you know how important she is to me. Why would you allow this, right? And you kind of go through this battle almost with God and this just deep anguish, because you don't understand. But here's what I know. Life is always going to life. Always. It's always gonna be messy in some way. No, it may not be to the depths that what Chloe went through, and I certainly hope not for most people, but the struggle is always going to be there in some form, right? And is it glitching, Debbie?
It is, but I'm getting your audio, so just go ahead and keep going.
Okay. Um, we have a storm coming through, so that may be why.
Okay, no worries.
But, life is always gonna life, and I think the thing that's important for us to remember as Christians is that nowhere in the Bible did God say that it was gonna be easy.
Yeah,
Nowhere. We
sure.
like to think that, right? That we're kind of shielded from hurt and trials and pain, but we're not. And so after kind of the moments of wrestling with God and kind of coming to terms with that it really wasn't his fault, so to say,
Mhm.
um, I ultimately had to surrender Chloe to him and just say,
Yeah,
"Okay, she's yours." Right? I know you love her and I need you to carry her through because she's in a place that I can't fix.
yeah. And that was that a turning point for you faith-wise? Like, because I think we get to this point of, "I can't do anything more. It's in your hands, God." And so I just as scary as it is to let go, I've got to.
Right, and there was it was April 4th, 23, and I remember it like it was yesterday, right? And she had been home because she had been doing better, and she decided to break into a liquor cabinet and that had 2 locks on it, and then when my 2 boys I had to send them home from school because I couldn't get a hold of her, um, and they found her unresponsive, laying face down in a
Mhm.
pillow in a pool of vomit. So, of course, they called 911, we rushed her to the hospital. And through that testing, we found out that her her alcohol level was 4 times the lethal limit. Right. And it wasn't that she was necessarily trying to take her life on that day, but she wanted the noise and the pain that she was feeling and kind of she always calls it noise in her head to kind of quiet.
Yeah.
And I remember bringing her home that night from the hospital after she had been cleared, and she was so weak, like, emotionally, physically, mentally, just kind of spent, right? But she still was covered in vomit, and I had to put her in the shower because she couldn't bathe herself, and I had to scrub her hair and get the vomit out of her hair. And I remember looking at her, and she's crying, and she's just saying, "I'm sorry, mama. I'm sorry, mama." But in that moment, it's literally like God I could hear it almost as audible as I could hear Chloe. "Jen, you have to surrender her to me. As much as you love her, I love her more." That was kind of the point that was like, "Okay." Because as much as we love our children, right? And as mamas, we fiercely love our children, but we have to remember that God loves them more and that they're really on loan to us, right? That he gave them to us and we are to care for them and take care of them and love them, but he loves them too.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the moment where I finally just said, "Okay, God, I don't know how to help her anymore." Not that I was washing
Mhm.
my hands of it, right? And not that I wasn't gonna take actions and still take steps to help her and support her and love her, but I realized in that moment that I could not carry her burden and her pain for her, even though I had tried to as her mom.
Yeah. What about you through this whole process? I mean, were there times when, as you're trying to advocate for her at school, with therapists, with doctors, all the service providers who, are become really a multidisciplinary team of people trying to help her. Have I lost you completely?
Oh, it's just glitching.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. We may just choose to not do video as long as we've got audio, we're cool. Ho so I'll repeat that question. How did you take care of yourself through this whole process? Were there times, as you were advocating for her at school or with therapists or doctors, where you felt like you were losing you in the process? And if so, what did you do?
Oh, man. There were many times that,
Yeah.
you feel that way because,
Yeah.
again, you're not just a mom to one child, right, that's hurting. You're still a mom to everybody else and a spouse, and, most women work now, and there's lots of different avenues and where we're pulled. But I remember waking up one morning after Chloe had been doing really well. Like, we had gotten her in with the perfect therapist. We were working on cognitive behavior therapies, which is a form of therapy that helps to kind of retrain the brain and to bring out those parts of trauma. And then you kind of teach them better coping skills to kind of heal that part of the brain.
Yeah.
But I remember waking up going and looking in the mirror and going like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, I was so kind of lost, right? Because I had spent years doing everything in my power to protect her, right? And to support her and take care of her, but in the moment I had lost who I was. I didn't even know like who I wanted to be anymore, right? Because we lose that. But I think that that's not necessarily always the case in just when it's a really hard struggle. I think it's also the case for a lot of women, right? In general, right? That we
Yeah.
often struggle with this as we get older and our kids change and the seasons change and we kind of lose sight of who we are as a woman and who we are kind of as a child of God, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I realized in that moment that I had not been taking care of myself. I had gained immense amounts of weight, you know, um, I didn't feel well. Overall, I had put my health on the back burner. And I think
Mhm.
that was kind of the wake up call. Like, it's like, okay, I've got to regain control of my health and my well-being
Yeah.
so that I could continue to be the advocate and the support system and all the things that I am for everybody.
So, what were some practical things that you did that helped you balance being a mom, being a professional, and yet still being a whole person in the middle of all this going on?
The biggest thing is just taking time for yourself, right? And having those moments of self-care. It doesn't have to be and I think when I say self-care like to women, they often think that I mean big extravagant things, right? Like,
Yeah.
long spa days and things that cost, lots of money. And that's not really what I mean. I mean, yes, those things are nice, but it doesn't have to be that. I mean, for me, it was literally locking myself in my car because that was where no animals and no kids could follow me.
Yeah.
Just listening to worship music. That's what it was for me. But it can also be taking a 10-minute or 15-minute walk in the morning,
Yeah.
stopping to pick some flowers,
Yeah.
for yourself. It
Yeah.
can be those little things that
Being
just refresh
present,
your
being
soul.
present in the moment, being present with God, being present with your thoughts. Yeah.
Right. But it's those little things. And so women need to take that time for them because if you don't take those moments for yourself, you're going to wake up like I did and realize, oh man, who am I? What do I want to do? And I think sometimes even in the hard times and we're faith-based, right? And we rely on God to pull us through all of those things. But even in that, we kind of stop talking to God about it for ourselves, right? We're so focused on Oh gosh,
Help
please.
my daughter, help my daughter, help my daughter, help me
Right,
other kids, right, yeah.
right. But we forget that we need him to help us too.
Yeah.
And then we stop listening and hearing his voice, and then we get kind of off on these weird paths. I just feel like we have to stay grounded and centered, and the way to do that is just take a little bit of time for yourself.
So, I encounter this sometimes with women, and I'm sure you have too in your role, both as a nurse and a coach, that there are women out there who think that's selfish because we're so wired. I mean, I believe it our God-given role, one of them is to be nurturers and caretakers, but then we take that to the extreme and we take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves, and somehow we start to think that it's selfish to stop and take time for ourselves. How do you speak to that?
But self-care is not selfish, right? It's necessary.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely necessary. I feel like that, yes, it is a unique design the way that God designed us, right? To be caregivers and nurturers
Yeah.
and moms and wives. Like, we have a very unique purpose. But it also never says that, like, you can't take time for yourself, right? And especially if you're leaning into faith, like, that's what if you take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a few minutes a day,
Yeah.
now you can step more into your purpose, into your calling, right? That God has given you, right? And it may be in the season of you being a mom or a wife right now, but you
Mhm.
still have a purpose in that. And if you are rested and your soul is refreshed, then you can step into that every day with
Mm.
joy and peace and more love, right? Because remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. A lot of self-care really is about setting healthy boundaries. So what kind of boundaries did you have to set for yourself within the family that maybe were difficult at first to do, but really absolutely necessary for you?
Well, for me, that was definitely like making a scheduled time for me, right? Like,
Mhm.
I live and die by a paper calendar. And so if you don't if you don't have that, or if you on your phone, like, I literally had to write down, like,
Mhm.
Jen's, 15 minutes, right? And that is a boundary. And it's not mean. You're not
Yeah.
being harsh, right?
But
And of course there's
selfish.
always
Yeah.
some random circumstance that may come up where you're needed, but it was really about being intentional,
Mhm.
right? And setting that scheduling that time for me. And I also think that it's important for women, and what I found was in the beginning, we didn't really talk about what was going on, right, with Chloe. We kind of kept that to ourselves. And I think that there's a lot of sometimes judgment around like mental health, right? And especially as Christians, we get hung up on that. Like, there must be something wrong in the house or something is not right. And so there is a little bit of a judgment. So we didn't really talk about it. But what I found later is after I kind of discovered, okay, self-care is not selfish, but also finding out that there is joy in community with women, right? Going out to dinner, right? Being intentional with once every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is that you're being intentional about that time where you can laugh and you can talk freely with your friends, right? Or if it's even in a support group, it doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying it has to be your friends, but if in a support group, right? There has to be that where there is joy in community, right? Because that's what it also helps to refresh your soul, right? Because you realize that you're not alone.
Yeah. I think some women are really, really good at innately knowing that they need the company of other women, and then there are others of us who do it's like it comes from behind us and we go, "Oh, yeah, I need that," but we're not taking the time to do that. So, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, I think that, again, as moms and as wives and women, we're generally busy, right? We
Yeah.
live, especially in the different seasons of your children growing up, right? There's
Mhm.
you're busy when they're babies, and then it gets a little better when they get to school, and then you're busy again with all the sports activities, right? But if you don't have intention and you forget and you don't make it a priority, then you wake up and you feel all alone. And that's what I mean, that there's so much community in support in women being friends. And listen, I'm fiercely independent. I have been my whole life. Um, but through that experience with Chloe, I have found that in those moments, I needed women around me that could help lift me up, that could pray for me, that could offer a different support than my husband could offer, right? Because women, we understand each other. We understand our feelings, our language, right? Oftentimes our spouses don't always understand that because they're men. They're built different, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just they don't understand the level of grief and guilt and shame and pain that we often carry as women.
And anxiety.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Go back to what you were saying about, the perceived judgment and sometimes the literal judgment of mental health struggles. What do you wish more people understood about the reality of, like, parenting a child or a teen who's struggling with mental health?
Well, I mean, first we need to be compassionate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially as Christians, we need to be more compassionate
Yeah.
because mental health is on the rise, right?
Yeah.
Especially
Unfortunately,
among
yeah.
right, especially among teens, right? Um and some of that came after 2020 with COVID and all that kind of stuff when they were more isolated.
Yeah.
But just because a child or a teen, even a young adult or even an adult is struggling with mental health, anxiety, depression, it doesn't mean that they're crazy, right? And I think we need to understand that. And sometimes we need to step back and go, were there times in my own life that I was anxious or I was feeling that, but I didn't know how to label it, right? And it doesn't mean that something is wrong in that household. Chloe is case in point. We had a very loving, caring household.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it took a hold of her, and I do think that there is a form of spiritual warfare oftentimes when it comes to especially teens with mental health, um, and I think that the enemy knows that the way to break a family is to harm the children, right? And oftentimes family support systems, husbands, wives, they often get into conflict with each other about how to take care of the child. And if he can create conflict and dissension within the family, then you're no longer serving for the kingdom, right?
Yeah. Yeah, your eyes are off the big picture and now in the mess and the chaos of what's going on inside your family structure, yeah. Yeah. So, you talked a little bit earlier about just sometimes feeling the guilt of, like, how did this happen? Did I do something wrong as a mom? Did we screw up? How do you encourage women, moms, to let go of that guilt that often comes with feeling like they're not enough for their kids?
Here's the thing. God did not make a mistake in making you the mama. You are the perfect mama for that child. God knew long before that child was even in your womb that they were going to have struggles with anxiety, depression, mental
Mm,
health, whatever it may be. And he still chose you to be their mama.
mm,
God doesn't make mistakes. And I think we need to hold on to that, right? In the hard times, we have to hold on to the fact that we are the perfect mom for that child for that season. Okay. And I think that the other thing that moms have to realize is that unlike a physical wound when the child is small and they fall down, that we can instantly make it better. That sometimes that's not the case. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with being their support system, love them, support them, speak life into them, but we cannot carry their burden for them. And that's what I realized in the moment when I was washing Chloe's hair is I had been trying to carry and take her pain on me,
Yeah.
but I can't physically do that. And when we do that, we weigh ourselves down with even more burden, right? So it's the child at some point has to take accountability and responsibility for their mental health, right? And do they want to get better? And I think that that's important for moms. We can advocate and we can push them along, this therapist and this counselor and all of the things. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it's going to be up to the child
Yeah.
to do the work in the therapist office, right?
So where is Chloe in her journey at this point?
Oh, Chloe is a thriving 17-year-old, right?
Yay.
She's still a competitive cheerleader. She's on a world's team now. Um,
Good job.
but Chloe had to do the work.
Yeah.
She had to do the difficult things of reliving and feeling the trauma that happened to her in order to take a step to heal.
Mhm.
And I think that that's important for moms is that we need to understand that we are the support system, but we are not the burden carriers for them.
Yeah. Very true. Well, what a I mean, you guys have been on an amazing, painful, difficult, messy journey. You describe your style as bringing honesty and humor to heavy topics. So how can you what would you say to people to help them find lightness in the middle of a hard season? And maybe we could hear one of your goat stories?
So, yeah, Chloe, when she was in school, she's homeschooled now. And we pulled her out midway through her freshman year because we just realized that that was making her anxiety even worse. Um, but Chloe did show goats, and her show goat was named Elvis. Um, she loves this goat. We still have this goat because she could never put him on the meat truck. Kind of in the show world of goats is once
Right.
you raise them and you show them, you put them on the meat trucks. Well, that didn't happen. So now we have him and we have Ford because Elvis had to have a friend. But Elvis, he thinks he's a dog. And Chloe had taught him early on if she would stomp her feet at him, he would stomp his feet back.
Well, okay.
And so it's a game now. So Elvis now will walk up to Chloe even, 3 years later and stomp his feet when he sees her, wanting her to play with him. And she still loves that goat.
Yeah. How much does Elvis play a role in her healing?
Oh, I think that that's huge. Chloe
Yeah.
has always been an animal lover from
Mhm.
very early on anyway. We
Mhm.
oftentimes say that she's the animal whisperer because she has this really unique ability to kind of understand animals and almost what they're feeling.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, but
Yeah.
animals play a huge part in healing, and that's why we ultimately
Mhm.
got Chloe a service dog
Mhm.
because Chloe needed something always with her that could sense things, right? And because she does love animals so much and they love her, it only made sense to have a service dog for her. And actually that service dog was not something that we went out and spent a lot of money on. It was actually a dog that her and my middle son found walking on a walk one afternoon. Somebody
Oh.
had discarded this 4-week-old puppy, thrown her
Oh,
away.
that's terrible.
Terrible.
Less than a happy ending.
Yes, she weighed a pound, but when you
Oh.
and so Chloe had to bottle feed her, and so the dog's name is Luna, and Luna and Chloe have a very fierce
Course.
bond.
Of course, yeah. There's something about the unconditional love of an animal that I think really taps into our need to feel valued and worthy and lovable, and an animal just gives us that. We don't have to do anything to be loved,
No, but they especially like a dog, right? They love you no matter what.
no matter what, yeah.
This the dog, Chloe, we went through service dog training to get her certified, and Chloe ended up having to be the one to teach Luna all of the service dog techniques. But that was great for Chloe too because it taught Chloe confidence. It taught her how to be in control of a situation where in oftentimes in her life, she didn't feel any control, right? And so having the control over Luna with commands, it helped Chloe, right? And so training animals, loving animals, having to care for an animal is very therapeutic to children and their healing, right? I mean, that's why even horses, right? People talk about horse therapy all the time. Um, for people that have anxiety because animals they instinctually know, I think, when somebody's really hurting, and then you have to kind of step away from yourself and not be focused on yourself when you're caring for an animal.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I I've experienced this myself personally, and I know what you're saying is absolutely true. It's hard to even fully explain the bond that can develop as a result of an animal's sensitivity to you. It's amazing. So what does be as we begin to wrap up here, Jen, what does being a warrior mom mean to you today? And how are you hoping to inspire other moms to step into that identity of being a warrior mom?
I think a warrior mom is just a faith driven, a faith grounded mom who stands kind of in the shadow of God, right? We know that He is ultimately in control, but we get up every day to put on the armor of God, right? We have to.
Yeah.
But every day, even in the hard days, when you don't want to get up, when it's really hard and your heart is hurting and the pain is so deep, you get up and you show up every day. You rise every day. And I think that that's what's important is not to get trapped in our own grief as a mom or get trapped in the grief of our children, but we have to stand up and we have to rise to be the ones that can advocate for them, to love them, to support them, to speak life into them. They need that support at that time. So, really, it's just about getting up and rising again and again and again and again.
And again, yeah. So much wisdom in so many of the things you said today, Jen. Hey, where can people connect with you, learn more about your book, join the community that you're building for moms in the trenches? Where do they go to find you?
So, the book Warrior Mom Rising is on Amazon. And then I have my website, which is called warriormomcoach.net. There are free resources on the website. There is a link for my book. I also have a 30-day devotional that I wrote to help moms in the trenches kind of go back and rediscover themselves so that they can become grounded again in Christ, right? And that is on the website. You can
Mm,
email me from there. And then we have a
cool.
free community on Facebook, which there's a link on the website
Yeah.
that for
So
moms.
the website's the place to go, warriormomcoach.net.
Mhm.
And when you coach women, what does that look like? Is that like one-on-one coaching? Is it group coaching? Is it a combination?
So I certainly do individual coaching, but what I have found is that group coaching is the preferred way, right? And that's really what women are seeking because they are seeking community and support and being
Yeah.
validated in their feelings.
Yeah.
So most often I try to do group coaching sessions because I want women to build that community and the bond that for for each other.
Thank you so much for being here. I feel like, again, there was just so much meat in what you shared today. And I think for me, a couple of the big takeaways, again, just a reminder that self care isn't selfish. Self care is absolutely essential for our own well being, but also the well being of everybody in our family. Because if we aren't performing at our very best, then how can we give our very best to them? I think that's so huge. And then just leaning in, realizing and leaning into the knowledge that our strength comes from God, and that that's the whole concept behind being a warrior mom.
Mhm.
He's the one who gives us the strength to be there for our family.
Right. 100%.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to be here.
You know, if for those of you who are listening, I if if you're going through this, please reach out to Jen, reach out to me, reach out to someone, and if you know someone who's dealing with this, send them the link to this episode. I always say at the end of every session that you don't have to do this alone. If you're struggling in your own family with mental health, whether it's your child, whether it's your husband, whether it's you, you don't have to do it alone. N we those of us who are experts, experts because we've walked through it, experts because we've coached or helped other people through it, been trained to help people through it, a combination of both. The resources are out there, you just need to reach out for them.
And it's okay to
So
ask for help.
and it's okay.
Okay.
And absolutely, it's not a sign of weakness, it's really a I always say to people, it's a sign of courage and strength to say, "I can't do this alone. I need help. I need God, but I need to surround myself with a support system of both friends and cheerleaders, but also knowledgeable professionals, skilled people who can give me the tools and resources that I need with whatever this issue is." So, you know how to get a hold of Jen, you know how to get a hold of me, debbiecaudle.com. Okay, here it's coming, I'm gonna say it, okay? Keep your heart soft, keep it open. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be teachable. I'll see you next week.